Hey there, it's Kristen. And before we dive into today's episode, I have a tiny favor to ask. I'm planning some exciting stuff this year for the podcast and my courses, and I would really love your input. I put together a super quick survey. It's mostly multiple choice and shouldn't take you more than a few minutes. Your feedback will directly shape the content I create this year, so I can make sure it's exactly what you need to thrive in your business without the hustle. Because I know your time is precious, everyone who completes the survey gets entered into a giveaway where 2 lucky winners will get a $50 gift card to Amazon or Target, your choice. It's just a little thank you for helping me make this year on the show the best yet. Head over to kristendoyle.co/survey, or you can find the link in the show notes. The giveaway ends on April 14th, so don't wait too long. Hey y'all, welcome to this episode of The Savvy Teacher Seller. I'm your host, Kristen Doyle, and today I get to introduce you to my friend, Laura Kåmark. She and I are talking all about how we have been working hard this year to prioritize time that we are working on, not just in our businesses. Laura is a website and tech strategist for women who love their work, but not the tech. She helps her clients simplify the back end of their businesses, use the right tech, and create evergreen systems so they can scale with confidence and ease. She's also the host of the Be Bold, Make Waves podcast, where she shares inspiring stories from women in business about scaling, growing, and the struggles that we all face along the way. Laura and I met a couple of years ago in a mastermind group, and we have been friends ever since. This year, at the very beginning of the year, she shared with me that she was going to try to implement something she called CEO weeks, once a month, to force herself to do some of those really important tasks that needed to get done in her business, but that she was always putting off and never really actually got around to. Turns out, surprise, surprise, I was having the same problem. I'm sure some of you have that problem as well. And I decided to start doing these CEO weeks along with her. We committed to scheduling these out on our calendar and holding each other accountable for our CEO time. And today we sat down to have a conversation and share this process with you and to talk about how you can implement some of these same systems in your TPT business. We are talking social media, email marketing, data analysis, and of course, the tools that we use to make it all faster and easier. Now, if you are thinking that you can't do CEO weeks because your TPT business is a side hustle and you're in the classroom full-time during the week, don't worry, we have ideas for you too. Let's dive in. Hey, TPT sellers, ready to see growth in your business? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Savvy Teacher Seller. I'm Kristen Doyle, and I'm here to give you no-fluff tools and strategies that will really make an impact on your sales. Let's get started, y'all. Hi, Laura. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Kristen.
I am so excited to talk with you some about something you and I have talked a lot about over the last, 10 months? We started this in January, I think. Yeah. And it is end of October now. So we've been at it for almost 11 months. And so you and I have talked a lot about our CEO weeks, but I am so excited to kind of share what that looks like with my audience and talk a little bit about what we've been doing during CEO weeks. So maybe let's start with, I think this was your idea. So I'm going to let you start with, what is a CEO week?
Yeah, absolutely. So this kind of goes back to last year. I was feeling so burnt out. I had, I'm full-time in my business. I'm not side hustling anymore. So I'm so overbooked with calls, doing coffee chats, all these things. And I was not feeling a lot of space to work on my business, to create content for my business, to build some different things I want to have on the back end, different products, different things that would help my business grow. And I wasn't making time for that. And so at the start of the year, I said, you know what? I am just going to block off my calendar the first Monday through Friday of the month. And it's going to be set to reoccurring. So it will just always be like that. So no one can schedule anything with me. And the reasoning behind that was to just have the space to do that. I knew if I put it near the end of the month, I would find other things that needed to be done and stick it in that time and like take from that time. So I put it at the beginning of the month. Again, like if the first of the month falls on like a Tuesday, it won't be till that second week. So it kind of moves around, but it's literally just set to reoccurring. And it has created so much space and openness in my schedule, and I've loved it. And so this year I've been able to create more content for my business. I've been able to have that week where I just focus on the things that's on that like never ending to-do list for my business and get some things knocked out. So the idea of the CEO week is it's just a week that I'm able to fully focus on just my projects for my business and work on that. So, and I recognize a lot of your audience they're side hustling, they're still in the classroom. And so they might not have a full week they can take off, and that's okay. It could be taking, Monday night, maybe after the kids are in bed. I used to do that a lot when my kids were younger and I didn't have a full week to do things like this. And just really having that time structured and having your list and knowing like, these are the things I'm going to accomplish for my business during my CEO time. So it could be maybe on a Friday or on a weekend, even just once a month where you have that dedicated time to focus on growing your business.
Yeah. And I think it's so important that we do spend time on the things that grow our business, the things that get, like you said, pushed off the list, because we all can feel like there are these pressing things that we need to get done right now. I know every time I open my email, there is something new that suddenly jumps to the top of my must do right now list because it's sitting there in my inbox. And it's just so important to put those things aside for a little bit of time to work on the things that are working on our business versus just working in our business. Yes. It's so easy to get swept up in the working in your business, answering questions from customers and fixing something that had a mistake in it, and, doing all of these other little things that obviously are important, but they can get in the way of working on the big things that can make a huge difference in where our business is going long term.
Absolutely. I feel like there's so many things, especially on the back end of our business. We do a lot of manual pieces to our business, especially when we're first starting out and when we're growing. There's a lot that's done manually, and there are things we can do and put in place, systems and processes. And it takes time to set those up. Mm-hmm. But once they're set up, it frees up your time.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my big goals this year when we started our CEO weeks was to spend some of that time on things like setting up a welcome sequence in my email, because I didn't have one yet and I knew I needed one. I had needed one for years, but it's one of those things that just doesn't get done if you don't set aside time to work on it. So lots of those kinds of things that we can do during our CEO weeks. Let's talk about some of those CEO tasks. What kinds of things are we doing during our CEO week?
Well, I know for me, I'm doing a lot of content, not just creation, but scheduling. So I'm taking Instagram posts and getting those scheduled out so that they're ready to go. I'm taking, I'm putting in place an evergreen nurture sequence in my email. That's very jargony. Let me break that down a little bit. So what an evergreen nurture sequence is in an email is it's content that is not date specific. I'm not saying, hey, it's Monday and it's my CEO week. I'm not starting an email saying that. Mm-hmm. I'm making sure all the language could be read at any point during any time of the year. And I have a sequence that gets put in place so that once people get on my list, get that first welcome sequence, like what you just talked about putting in place, then they go into my nurture sequence. So in that nurture sequence, they get specific emails where they will be provided different value, training, different resources, and then also the opportunity for me to make offers to them. Also opportunities for me to ask them like questions for feedback, stuff like that. So I can continue to engage and just nurture. They can get to know me better and just really keeping up that communication. Because I think we all know that email list is so important to our business. And so part of what I've been working on during my CEO time is just really continuing to build out that sequence so that as people hear me on a podcast, or I speak at a summit or any event, and then they get new people come into my world, get on my email list, they then get nurtured, and it's not something of me every week being like, what am I going to write to my email list? It's also reusing the content, which is great because I'm a big fan of repurposing past content.
Absolutely. We have good content out there and we definitely need to repurpose it. Let's talk a little bit about this idea of an evergreen nurture sequence, though, in terms of TPT, because when you first told me about how you were setting yours up, I immediately loved the idea. And I don't know if you remember, but I think the first thing I said was, I can't do that for chalk and apples.
Mm-hmm.
Because my chalk and apples list is teachers, and teaching is so very seasonal in terms of what we are talking about to our audience at different times of year, which of our products we're promoting. All of those things have to be tied to the seasons, especially in the lower grades, in the elementary grades, because we are even, if it is Thanksgiving, we are teaching basic concepts. We're teaching math, but it's got turkeys on it and things because we're trying to keep these kids excited and engaged. And so it really does matter that things are seasonal and timely in our business, but that doesn't mean we can't automate. And it doesn't mean that we can't find ways to take some shortcuts and create an almost evergreen sequence. At least it's evergreen from one year to the next. Let's talk a little bit about some ways that we can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so many things. So in terms of like the email piece, you can still create it and have it be seasonal based on like, here's your January sequence, here's your February sequence. And then depending on when someone, and you could set that up for the whole year. And then depending on when someone gets into your world, joins our list, there can be conditional formatting, which is something that your email list provider, as long as you have like one that's capable of these sort of things. Not all email list providers are created equal. You do need to have a good one in place to be able to do this. One that's powerful enough, like ConvertKit or ActiveCampaign, and able to do this conditional formatting. And say to it like, hey, depending on what month it is, like if we're here in the world, drop these after the welcome sequence, drop this new subscriber into this sequence. Mm-hmm. And so it puts them in the right month, in the right place at the right time. So it still can be. So you could potentially take all those emails that you've been sending out, whether, we've all done it. There's no shame in like, I have a list. I haven't been emailing them consistently. We have all been there, and that's okay. It's okay to just start nurturing them. And there's lots of resources out there for help with what to write and all those things. But if you don't nurture those people, especially if they've previously bought from you, they're more likely to buy from you again, buy your products, but tell them about your products. We can't just sit there and think, that they're just on your TPT store, like looking through everything you have, like let them know.
Right. They really need to be prompted that, hey, this season is coming up and I have these resources that will help you teach whatever during this month.
Yeah. Cause how many times are we sitting there and being like, you're like driving, you're thinking about, that time when you're just like driving, all these ideas come to you and you're like, I really need to get this, come up with something fun for the kids in the next season that we're getting into. It's, we're going into Thanksgiving time, November. It'd be great to have some new fun resource. And then if that resource just happens to pop into your inbox, that's so much easier than having to go search for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing I've been working on, like you said, is writing out those emails, and they're sitting in a Google Doc initially so that it's all kind of ready to plug in, and then putting them in kind of on a weekly basis. So I've got 4 weeks of emails for January and 4 more for February, and we continue rolling through the year that way. It gives you a really good way to promote those resources that you have that are timely, but still have it all set up in a very automated way. And thanks to the power of things like ChatGPT, we can even take those and do a little rewrite of what I already wrote. Mm-hmm. So it's still my ideas. I know a lot of us, we don't want to rely on AI to the point that it's not even our ideas anymore. Everything starts to sound the same, all of those kinds of things. But that can help us just tweak the thing we've already written and make it a little fresh and new for the next year.
Yeah. And taking that to-do list item off your plate, that gives you back so much time to either do other things for your business, time to go spend with your family, time to do other things, and know that your business is still running on the back end.
Yeah, absolutely. It helps so much to just have some of that happening all on its own. And there's also this magic that happens when you didn't even write an email, but people are buying from the email you wrote last year or whenever.
Yeah. I mean, I have a client that I recently just set up. We just put in place, I think, 5 months of nurture emails. And then each month there's a flash sale to one of her products. She has she's not a teacher, but she's an online service provider and has digital products. And I think she has 4 digital products. And we have a flash sale for every month. And people are just starting to go through it because we got it all set up and activated. And I'm loving getting these messages from her. She's like, oh my gosh, I made a sale today. And I didn't I didn't have to live launch. It happened while I was out doing other things. And I told her, I said, just keep sending me these messages because I love hearing that. I love hearing my clients are like getting these results because that's exactly what we want to be happening is we want to build these businesses, but we also don't want to spend all our time just living and breathing our businesses, all our free time. We want to be able to step away and have some of it running on the back end.
Yeah. I think a flash sale is a great idea for like some of our bigger bundles that are timely, some that are good to sell during certain seasons. I know most of us have some big bundles in our store because bundling up little bitty resources is a good way to increase your income. But putting some flash sales on those is a great idea too. Now, for my TPT listeners, that does require you to have a store on your own website or on a shopping platform of some sort outside of TPT because we can't really control flash sales on TPT without doing something manual. So it's not really an option to automate on TPT, but it's definitely something you can do if you have your own store or you have something like Shopify, or maybe you're using ThriveCart checkout or something like that. So another thing I always love to do during my CEO week, and I know this is maybe not something you do during yours, but I always take a little bit of time to analyze my store's data because we have so many products in our stores. And my audience has heard me say a million times that we have more potential to sell more of our products by making our existing ones better than we do by just creating a bunch of new stuff.
Yep.
So I always like to take a little bit of time during CEO week to pull my data. And I'm sure everyone has heard me talk about Your Data Playbook. It's the membership that I'm part of that helps analyze that data for me so that I can pull it and just look at numbers and know that, product A, I need to go in and tweak the pricing on because it's converting better or worse or whatever than it normally does. And I need to play with pricing, and maybe I need a new cover image for product B, or I need to work on the SEO keywords for product C. And it helps me find all of those things. So that is definitely a big piece of what I do on my CEO week. I don't know. Do you analyze any data on your CEO week, Laura?
I think it's great that you brought that up because looking at the data is so important in our businesses because that's really going to tell you what's performing. I mean, otherwise we're just kind of throwing things at the wall and not actually looking at what the data tells us. So important to do. I try to remember to go in. I need to set a better reminder task because it definitely is one of those things, like I'm guilty of it, that it goes on the back burner. It's not really the sexiest thing to do in our business is like to analyze all these numbers. Like it can be a little overwhelming.
It definitely can be overwhelming, but the payoff is so good. And especially when you're tracking your progress. I've shared a story not too long ago about a product that I changed a price on in May. And when I track my progress, I have made an extra $3,000 from May until October on that product compared to what I was making on the product before the pricing change.
That's fantastic.
That's insane. Yeah. It's wonderful. And it really just goes to show how important it is to be looking at your data and analyzing how your products are doing, and then coming back and reflecting on the changes you've made too, and making sure that they are working well. Because not every change I've made has that kind of a success story. I have some where I've made a change and I come back a month or two later, I'm like, all right, well, that didn't work. So I have to change it back. But the data is what tells us that. And we have to make sure we're taking a little time to look at it.
Yeah, I find because I don't have a store on my website, but I do have blog posts, and going and looking and seeing how my blog posts are performing has been really eye-opening because I So I have a couple of articles that get a lot of SEO traffic. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
yes, I did really good on that. But
Yeah.
I'm a little surprised at how often I'm seeing that it pops up in the reporting. It tells me how much it's popping up on Google. And I'm like, okay, good to know. Maybe I need to
Yeah.
create more content like this because
Mm-hmm.
this is popular.
Yeah. And it's so helpful too to go in like on Google Search Console and see which keywords are actually bringing people to your content, because sometimes the keyword that's bringing people to my blog post or my podcast episode or whatever it is might not be the one I thought I needed to be optimizing for. And I need to change because the keyword that's actually getting people to my site is a different one. And maybe I can rank higher if I focus more on that keyword instead of whatever the other one was that I picked.
Right. Yeah. It's, again, the importance of looking at the data and really analyzing it and looking at it over a period of time. Like, it doesn't happen overnight. You need to go back and reflect on it, just like you stated. Like, that's so important for us to be doing in our businesses.
Yeah. And from a practical standpoint, I usually look at my TPT data every month. And then I look at my blog post or my website data, blog posts, podcasts, product listings in my store, all of the website data. I look at about once a quarter because I do find changes we make on TPT take effect really quickly. Even SEO changes, you may not know this, but I can change titles on my products on TPT and they will move up in rank within a few hours, which is not remotely the same story as Google, where it takes 2, 3, 4 months to really see changes show up. So for my website, I tend to look about once a quarter. And then for TPT, I look every month.
Yeah, I probably need to be doing my website stuff a little more frequently than I do, but that's okay because it's, I think it's important to also give yourself grace and know like there's a lot of things like we should be doing in our business.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's where bringing it back to the CEO week can be really, again, if you don't have a week, that's okay. See just a block of time that is dedicated to doing that work on your business so that you're able to know where you're at, know your numbers, know what needs to be changing, and have the time to make those changes.
For sure. We talked a little bit about content. And I know one of the things that you spend a lot of time on is scheduling out content. I definitely have to pop in once a month, once every 2 months at least, and do some content planning. I try on my CEO week to do that content creation as well. And I know you try to do some of your content creation your CEO week too. Let's talk a little bit about that because I know not everyone listening has time to write. If you're doing weekly blog posts or podcasts, not all of us have time to write or record 5 pieces of content in your CEO time because, like you said, we might just be doing a few hours. It might be the morning on Saturday or something like that. So even if we don't have time to create all of the content, I think taking some CEO time for content planning is really important too, because when you get ready to sit down and plan out and write that content, if you've already got a plan in place, that cuts out so much time and just mental work of trying to figure out, okay, I have a blog post I need to write this week, or I have a podcast episode to record. What am I going to do?
Yeah, I think either having an like continuous document. I have a physical little book that I write all my things down in so that I have it in front of me and I keep my running list of like, here's all the things here's my content ideas. Here's the things I want to be creating. Like, so I know when I sit down in that block of time, I know what I should be working on. And that does, like you said, it helps save on the bandwidth of that mental energy of like, oh, what do I need to do now? And just kind of sitting there. And instead you kind of like, open up your computer and like, oh, let me go check Facebook and do all these other things because you're not really feeling motivated and excited because you don't maybe necessarily know what you should be working on. So yeah, definitely sitting down and having that plan and mapping out like what you want to be talking about, what products you want to be promoting, when to be promoting them, and just mapping that out so that you know like, okay, let me go create a blog post centered around this product that I want to be promoting this time of year.
Yeah, because if we pull up our calendar or whatever you're using to manage your tasks and it says write a blog post, it's so easy to just get distracted and go down a rabbit hole of other things. But if my calendar says write a blog post on center activities for December, well then now I know what I'm doing. Yeah. I can just start doing that one thing instead of going down a whole rabbit hole. And I love that you mentioned thinking through what products you need to be promoting this month, because that's a big piece of it too. I like to look at what sold when I'm analyzing my data. I like to look at what sold in the upcoming month last year. And that's how I plan out my content. What were my best sellers for December last year? That's what I need to be promoting in December this year.
I love that so much because, you can sit there and be like, oh, I know what I want to talk about. But again, the importance of analyzing that data and saying what is performing well, what are the keywords? That's because you might have picked a keyword, but if that's not what's being used and how you're being found, you need to change that up. So again, yes, the importance of going back and looking at analyzing that information and then using that information as you move forward and plan out your content. So important.
Yeah. I have been planning out, I know you do paper, but I love my little plan in Google Sheets. It is the simplest thing ever. I have dates. My blog posts and podcast episodes go out on Tuesdays. Blog post for Chalk and Apples, podcast for Kristen Doyle. And they go out on Tuesdays, both of them. So I have my little Google Sheet that has all of the Tuesday dates. And if you didn't know this, or if maybe someone else listening didn't know this, if you type in Tuesday dates, whatever date interval you want, and then drag them down, it will keep doing like every 7 days from then until whenever you stop, which is so helpful. It's my favorite little trick in Google Sheets right now. But I do that, and I just give myself at the beginning of the year, I do a full year's worth of Tuesdays, and I start brainstorming, what am I going to post about and what am I going to record podcasts about? I don't map out the whole year in January. I can't work that way. I am amazed by people who can. But I do it, 2 or 3 months at a time usually is when I map that stuff out. And then I have another tab on that same Google Sheet that's just a brain dump of ideas. So if someone emails me or asks a good question on comments on an Instagram post or something, I'll just drop those into my brain dump of ideas because, sometimes you need an idea from someone else. You're just not feeling creative right now.
Oh, I love that. I'm always curious how people gather their brain dumping into different documents and things. I have a brain dump Google Doc. I have an email brain dump, a blog post brain dump. I have all these different brain dump documents, but I know it's titled brain dump or brainstorm. It's brainstorm. And so I can do a search for it because a lot of times I'm out walking the dog and I have an idea. And so I just want to write it down real quick before the idea just floats away out of my head and disappears into the world.
Yeah. I tend to pull up the Notes app on my phone for that. And then I, at some point, will move it into its place where it actually belongs.
I do the Notes app too. And then I'm finding I sometimes have my ideas in too many places.
I try to open the same note every time. It's just my one little brain dump note. So that way I don't end up with a million notes in my Notes app and not able to find anything.
That's a good little tip right there. Because I have way too many notes that a lot of them go back very long in time.
Yeah.
They go back far. And I'm like, do I still need this? And so it's been on one of my to-do, not a CEO week to do. It's a very low priority to do of going back through and going and analyzing what's in there and can I get rid of things.
Let's talk a little bit about some pitfalls. Some things we might run into trying to implement CEO weeks. I know you and I've both had some struggles as we were getting started, especially early this year. And I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, I think for both of us, it's gotten to be kind of just the routine now. Yeah. And it feels good and it feels easy at this point. But let's talk about some of the things that we did run into early on. Do you have anything that comes to mind?
I do. I know I had some of those weeks where in July, we were actually gone. It fell over 4th of July week. And so that was a week the kids were home from school and we were actually out of town. And so I'm like, I wasn't planning on doing client work this week anyway, but I wasn't able to work on my business because we were gone. So there was a number of weeks that kind of fell when I had other things happening in life, which is okay. It's okay to do it. I know I had other times where there was a project I needed to finish up for a client and I just wasn't finding other time in my schedule. So I did book it during that week. I had times where I just needed to get, a client needed a VIP day. And so I was able to squeeze her into that week as well for a day there. But what else were pitfalls?
So really, it comes down to being flexible
Yeah.
when things do pop up, because the idea of a set week every single month and it's always the same, and I am very strictly blocking this time out to work on this, that sounds great, but that's not real life. It's just not.
Yeah.
Kids get sick and they're home from school, and next month I am going to be on vacation the entire CEO week that we would normally have. And so this time, because I am not doing VIP days the last couple of months of this year, I am taking a little break from those to work on some more things in my business. I was able to just move my CEO week. I'm actually doing the week that overlaps the end of the month instead of the first full week. So I'm just kind of bumping my CEO week up a little bit so that I still get that time. I'm still getting to do those things, even though I'm on vacation during my CEO week. And like you said, the nice thing is that means I don't have anything scheduled that week because it was already blocked out.
Yeah. I think just giving yourself grace, being flexible. It's not like it's okay. It's a week that's there to have openness and space in your calendar, because when we pack so much into our calendar, we can get overwhelmed. We can get burnt out.
Mm-hmm.
And I know for me, I just get so exhausted being on calls. I have a podcast as well. And so I'm on a lot of Zoom calls because mine are almost all guest interviews. And I love them, but it does get draining being on podcast interviews, discovery calls, client calls. Like, it's not having, coaching calls, not having a week of calls is so, it just makes it feel so much lighter. It feels like there's a lot of space, because I love being on the calls, but at the same time, there's this kind of energy shift where you're like in the middle of doing something and then you have to stop, get on the call, and then get off and get refocused again.
Yeah.
And it just kind of changes the momentum that you had going.
Yeah, it definitely does. We were just talking before we hopped on this call about how I think you said 9 minutes until I'm supposed to be on this call. And now I feel like I can't do anything else because I'm about to be on a call. And I'm the exact same way. When I have things scheduled, when I know I have to be in certain places, it just interrupts the flow for the rest of the day. And it's good to set aside some time where we're not going to have as much of that going on, so that we can really work on the things we need to do in our businesses.
Yeah. And allow yourself to have that creative space to create the content, to schedule the content, to just like let the creative juices flow. Because again, those interruptions can really just like, when you're in a good groove, it's hard to like stop, pull away, and then get back to it.
Yeah. Speaking of creativity, one thing I have found is I need to be flexible and give myself grace with where the CEO week falls within my life and my cycles. We just had Tiffany, who you know very well, talking about working in flow with our cycles, and how, for men, they tend to work in this 24-hour cycle. And so every day is a fresh start, and they're able to just do whatever is on the calendar. But sometimes my CEO week falls in one of those weeks where I just don't have the energy to be creative, and maybe I'm okay with looking at the data and making the plans, but I can't create things this week.
Yeah.
So it really helps me. I haven't shifted the actual CEO weeks because I like doing things at the beginning of the month, but it helps me just look at my CEO week this month. Can I create content this time? Or do I need to just plan the stuff and create the content next week or the week after? That's one place that I have definitely struggled some months. I know you have gotten some Voxer messages from me saying I have XYZ on my to-do list and I can't do it. And I don't know why I can't do it right now. And I've just had to give myself that grace to say, you know what, if I can't do it right now and I'm just not there, then I'm going to pencil this into my calendar for next week and I'll do it then. And I'll go ahead and make the plans. I'll do the parts that I can do right now.
Yeah, it's so important for us to give ourselves flexibility in our plans and in what we're doing. Like you said, give grace, because even though we plan for this time to like get it all done, like it still can't all get done at once. Our cycles, our energy, like it fluctuates. I'm so glad you had Tiffany come in. She's amazing and so knowledgeable. It's been so interesting as I've learned from Tiffany different like ways for tracking my cycle and my energy levels and my creativity. It's been absolutely eye-opening on how, and it makes sense. I mean, I don't know why I didn't think of it before.
right? I mean, we all know how it affects our moods. So
Yeah,
I don't know why we didn't think maybe this has some effect on our work too.
exactly.
Well, you are the tech and automations queen. So, can you share with us some of maybe the tech tools, the apps you like to use, things that you use to help kind of automate things and keep your business rolling?
Oh my gosh, yes. I love all my different tech tools. Because I do one-on-one client work, I know a lot of your audience doesn't, but Acuity is one of the tools I use and love, and it integrates, which means it just connects to other apps and things so seamlessly. Like it automatically creates the Zoom link for calls, which is great, and sends it. I love being able to connect. Like I have the podcast, and when someone is going to be a guest on my podcast, I have a release form for them to sign that just says I can use their voice, their image, their what they say for anything. And I have that set that as soon as they schedule, it automatically sends out to them to sign.
Mm-hmm.
And then my signature automatically gets added after they do. I don't have to do anything with that. It's just all automated.
And I know a lot of my listeners, they may not have client meetings, but I do have quite a few listeners who have podcasts. So definitely using something like you use Acuity, I use Calendly, but they're very similar. Something like that to schedule out these podcast interviews like the one that we're doing today and have things go out automatically so that you're not forgetting to contact the person you're interviewing or, not getting that release form signed and all of those things.
Yeah. And then I use Social Bee for my content scheduling. And so that connects to my Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, all the places. So I schedule out my social posts in there. And then I have them on evergreen. So they will repost after a certain amount of time, like they get put back in the queue after they post.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, that's been a huge focus on me for my business in the last year is to put things on evergreen so that I can still be showing up consistently, still be emailing my list and showing up, posting on social, the pieces that are evergreen. We've mentioned multiple times, I have my podcast as well. That's not evergreen in the sense of I need to post that every week. So I still go in and post, schedule that out for posting, but on Wednesday, because mine goes out on Wednesday, but all the other days it's my evergreen content, unless I have other stuff going on. If I'm speaking at an event, if I'm, when this podcast goes live, I'll go and schedule that in. So it's not saying that when you go evergreen that you can't ever do anything in real time. It just makes it so it's one less thing to be worrying about every week, every month to just consistently like, oh, that task list item that's just never done.
Yeah. I think that's something people forget too, is that just because you're putting things on evergreen doesn't mean you're totally hands off forever on it. You can make tweaks. You can leave white space in your content calendar to plug in those new podcast episodes and maybe conferences or summits or events that you're speaking at or anything like that you want to promote. You can leave space for that. I'm using SmarterQ, which is, similar to Social Bee. There's lots of those platforms out there. But my Chalk and Apples social media is on SmarterQ, and it's cycling out regularly now. And I just leave a little white space for the things I want to promote live in the moment. And the other thing that I've learned to do is kind of hack my scheduling system, where if I need – maybe there's a TPT sale going on a Tuesday, and on Tuesday I normally schedule or share out blog posts. I can just plug a new post in on SmarterQ and tell it to go out on that specific Tuesday, and if I tag it as a blog post, it'll go out, even though it's not. It's my little hacky way to get around things and go ahead and pre-schedule things for sales and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, because it's one less thing that you have to be consistently thinking about doing. And that, again, the idea is to create more ease and flow in your business. And that's the goal. So I'm also loving Thrivecart. I recently bought Thrivecart and switched over. I know you're a Thrivecart user as well. Mm-hmm. And I've been switching everything over to Thrivecart and ThriveLearn, and I'm just loving it.
Yes, I am loving Thrivecart. In fact, I have a podcast episode on my content calendar to talk about course platforms. Obviously, Thrivecart is not ideal for something like a store where people would be purchasing lots of items together. It doesn't work that way, but it is amazing if you have a course or a membership or something like that you're selling. And I know a lot of TPT sellers are doing those things now too.
Yeah, so great. But yeah, anytime that you want to use tech that's going to talk to your other tech pieces. Mm-hmm. So it's important when researching of like what's the best tech for you to figure out what other pieces you use in your business that it's going to communicate with. Because if it doesn't talk to the other pieces you use, it just is going to create a headache.
Yeah. That's been one thing that I have learned over the years from trying out different platforms for different purposes. One of the things I do now is before I even sign up for a new platform, I'm thinking, okay, do they integrate with my email provider? Do they integrate with my website? Whatever I need it to integrate with for that particular purpose. Can I integrate this, or am I going to have to do something on my own? Or am I going to have to use something like Zapier? Do they even integrate with Zapier? It's definitely something worth looking into. And I will say it has been the deciding factor on me choosing one platform over the other, because I just need things to work together on their own automatically so that I don't have to do things manually.
Yep, exactly. Such good advice right there.
Well, thank you so much for coming on today. This has been such a fun conversation. I always love chatting with you, and I always get ideas for things that I should be automating because, like I said, you were just the queen of automating all the things.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I always love chatting with you.
Where can my listeners find you?
They can either come check out my website, laurakåmark.com. That's Kamark, even though it's pronounced with an OH sound, but I know it'll be in the show notes. I'm on Instagram, also over at Laura Kåmark. That's where I'm most active. And come say hi. Let me know you heard me on Kristen's podcast.
Thank you so much, Laura.
Thanks so much for having me. This was so fun.
That wraps up our chat today with Laura Kåmark, all about setting aside time to work strategically on the things that can really move the needle towards growing our businesses. Huge thanks to Laura for joining us. If you would like to connect with her, you'll definitely want to follow Laura on social and grab her freebie on website power integrations. It is full of ways to simplify your business, get more sales, and most importantly, save you time. Head over to the link in the show notes to grab that freebie. And for more of Laura's awesomeness, you can head over to her podcast, Be Bold, Make Waves. You'll even find an episode with yours truly. Talk to you soon, friend. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please share it with another teacher seller who would also find it helpful. For more resources on growing your TPT business, head to kristendoyle.co/TPT. Talk to you soon.